From the bench to the bleachers, you are listening to the only podcast in Ontario that keeps you in the game.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's do this.
My next guest on In the Game is from the Arizona music scene. He is the rhythm guitarist for a band called Meat Puppets. Yep, you heard that right, Meat Puppets. Elmo Kirkwood, you are in the game. Let's get started by talking about where you were born and raised.
I'm born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, or the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. I guess technically Glendale. I grew up in Tempe and Mesa on the east side. I'm basically an east side dude, East Valley, Phoenix suburbs. That's what you'd call where I'm from, the East Valley. And I've always lived out here. My father lived in California for a couple years when I was preteen, early teens, and then he's been out in Austin, Texas since '97. So I split time between here and Texas would kind of be my home away from home, but really I'm just a desert dude, Phoenix, born and bred.
So in Phoenix as a young boy or a young child growing up, Elmo, let's start there. Was it music right away because of what was going on in the family, or was it like what we just talked about? Was there a combination of things with you? Did you do any sports
Yeah.
any nature or
all that stuff. I always liked music because we were around it, and I loved drawing when I was a kid. But I was a jock kid, absolutely. I played baseball and basketball, and I did martial arts for a long time. I did ninjutsu till I was like 15. I had a brown belt in that. I like skateboarding, but we grew up here in the desert, so a lot of nature stuff. A lot of hiking with my mom and dad, camping with both of them as well. A lot of that, fishing when I was a kid. But I loved basketball growing up. I loved it. That was always my favorite, always. And I still like sports. But growing up, yeah, I was just a little American boy. That's baseball and basketball. So
I have to agree. Music and sports go hand in hand. Like some people won't think about that, but the musicians write what they write and they create what they create.
Right.
When you watch sporting events like in baseball, these guys when they go to the home plate up to bat, they have like a walk-up song, right? So you're feeling what that athlete feels, and sometimes it could be Megadeth, Pantera, it could be Metallica,
Right.
it could be Drake, it could be I've heard salsa music,
Of course,
right?
yeah.
So you're getting a sense of their personality as an athlete, but you're also seeing what they like. I mean, this is another topic we'll talk about, but in 2009, one of the 3 concerts I ever went to was Pearl Jam in 2009 in Toronto. And
Nice.
at that time, a Toronto Blue Jay first baseman, his walk-up song was Jeremy. And of course, this guy, all of a sudden I'm at a concert and I turn and there he is, Lyle Overbay from the Toronto Blue Jays at the concert,
awesome.
drinking a beer, right? So people, yeah, like you said, the sports and the music, see some people, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I guess it's a stigma that some people would peg is that, when they used to look at high school, you had the jocks, the nerds, and then you had the punks, right? And they might tend to think that the musicians are not really into sports. But like you said, I did see a post about The Last Dance with basketball.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew, and then I see a lot of posts with you with Prize Fighter, but then you just said about being in martial arts.
Yeah.
So
I'm a fight fan for sure. I loved boxing for years, and I was reticent to watch MMA fights because I've just seen like UFC videos that I rented when I was a kid, and I didn't care for that because at the time I was really into like the martial arts, and I was like, these guys are just stomping on each other's balls. But then as an adult, I'd been always into the boxing, and I ended up just a buddy of mine on a lark, we got like a UFC pay-per-view. I was like damn, this is like watching a video game with real people. These dudes are nuts. So it's funny because I think in a lot of ways I kind of like, the hippie, and it's a bit incongruous me liking to watch people just beat the hell out of each other. But there's something I like about it. I like, just like with anything else, I like watching people make decisions on the fly. Same thing I like with like improvisational music. It's all the same thing. It's just you working with what's going on and like responding accordingly to your, whatever the reality you're confronted with is. So I like all that crap. Yeah, I love it actually.
Well, mixed martial arts, when you think about it, it's a form of art, right?
Oh
Like, I
yeah.
mean, you're mastering your
Oh yeah.
craft like a musician. You're competing, but you're mastering a craft, and it's an art how to take your opponent
Oh
down,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. I enjoy it. Like there's just so much to it, and it's interesting because it's not something. It's funny. I have, in my life and in my social life, I have the things that are like, prevalent between me and the people I socialize with. But then I just have the stuff that's usually me. And a lot of that was the sports stuff still. Like, it's funny with like my best buds, like, well, my one friend, he loves to watch the fights with me. But outside of that, when it comes to like me watching basketball games and sporting events and stuff, like I don't even really talk to anybody about it, but it's hilarious because like on my YouTube or my Instagram, I mean, it's like half the stuff is just sports stuff. So I know a bunch about it. I hardly ever get to flap my jaw about it, but it's so fun. Like I'd kind of gotten out of it through a lot of my 20s. I still enjoyed it, like kind of in the periphery, but man, I don't know. The last like I don't know, just I got a little bit older. I got up into my 30s and was a little less intense than I was in my 20s. And I was like, what do I like to do to relax? And I was like, man, you always love sports. Like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you just, so I hadn't had actually, no, I'll take a step back. I hadn't had a TV for a long time. And I moved into this house. I had some roommates and we had like direct TV. So we had like 800 channels and we had all the sports packages and these dudes like football and with these massive TVs, like, man, I had no TV to having a TV, half the size of the living room wall. And I'm watching sports on these TVs going, God damn, like, this is awesome. These dudes are like a foot and a half tall on the TV all of a sudden. They're not just like tiny characters. And that was actually what kind of propelled it back. I was like, whoa. So I started watching football, American football, which I've never enjoyed. And I still, to be honest, don't love. But I'm like any fair weather fan, like a casual. I'll watch the Super Bowl and I'll enjoy it. But that, and then I started watching the basketball games and I was like, oh, this is the shit. Like, this is what's up. Like, this I enjoy. So that kind of happened. And I realized this is relaxing and this is something that I really enjoy. So it's funny for me because it's almost like my little private world of like, every once in a while, I'll pop off on Facebook and write, like, I don't even write something. I'll just write like someone's name. Like, I'll just write like James Harden. And then about anybody on my friends list who like sports will like get on there and tell me why I'm wrong. And I'm just like, you know what? This is not why I do this. I'm not here to like chop heads or debate about this. So I don't even talk about it because I'm like, I don't care what you think. Like, well, I do care what you think, but it doesn't influence what I think. And I'm certainly not trying to influence what you think. So it's fun. It's my fun.
But that's why I liked you, because when I saw you, especially when you kind of connected with me on social media, was you were that whole sports thing, and I was like, man, here we are kind of reversing roles, where I said I kind of lost touch when I was playing in that professional
Right.
sports and kind of dropping the music and disconnecting from the music, because as I went through, and then I had my own personal struggles, and then I had kids, and it's like, but then now all of a sudden it's like I'm kind of needing music more in my life again than what I did through the 20s and my 30s, because I'm 41 now.
Right.
And like you said, you're with the sport, so all of a sudden I'm sitting there wanting to connect with music, which was you, and then I laugh because I see the sports post, and I'm like, right on,
Right,
right?
right,
Like, I'm
right.
like,
It all connects, man. Yeah, I want to tell you a real quick factoid before I forget. You say you played pro hockey. My dad's dad, Kurt's dad, was a semi-pro hockey player when he was young. So there you go. There's a connection.
there you go. Yeah. So with his dad then, so is the family always from down south, or were they in the northern part of the states, or how did that work growing up?
Midwest. My dad's family's from the Midwest. His parents are from Omaha, so in Nebraska, so farm country basically. So that's where they met,
Yeah.
and then they moved down Kurt and Chris were both born in Texas, but they didn't live there long. And then by the time they were, I don't know, by the probably mid 60s, they ended up in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's where they were raised. So
That's funny. That's funny. I mean, here I am. My cousin who's from Canada. She was a big time lawyer, and I worked with aerospace, and she's now outside of Scottsdale.
oh
so so she's transplanted Canada down there, and she was saying today that yeah, I'm out on the farm here and there, and and if you want to come down to visit, and I'm like, well, I just may. I'm like, you know what? I said I'm kind of doing a podcast today with Elmo, and I said they're down that way, and I said, maybe you're starting to scratch my back that I might just want to come down.
That's so funny. I'm seriously like Scottsdale is a city, is one city away from me. I'm right there. Yeah.
What is life like there though? I mean, I see it, I've traveled,
Yeah.
right? But I haven't gotten to that corner of America where you're talking about, even Texas or New Mexico or Arizona or Utah.
Yeah.
Like I haven't made it there. Like what is life like there for you?
Geez. In a lot of ways, it's just like anywhere else, obviously, but Arizona is an interesting place. I feel like for me, it's really chill. Like I keep it cool when I'm in town. I get to travel a lot and tour and stuff and see a lot of places. So that's cool. When I'm here, I usually just hang out at home. But life here is interesting. People, they can be really chill, but they're not at the same time. Like I think Arizona has like the craziest drivers. People are super aggressive and weird. It's kind of a really conservative place, but there's a lot of pockets of people that are super open-minded, which is kind of where I find myself. I'm cool with everybody, but it's just I'm I'm kind of like a long-haired hippie man. So your old conservative types typically want to stray away from me, which is fine by me. I'm whatever anybody's into, but I'm trying to think. Arizona, I don't know. There's a lot of good Mexican food. I'm a nerd. I love to cook. I like going to restaurants and good ones and stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool food around here if you can find it. It's one of those places. The way I'd say Phoenix is in general is there's a lot of cool stuff here and there's a lot of cool people, but you gotta seek it out. You gotta find it. It's not as obvious as some places. Like some American cities are like old and established and there's like a culture or some semblance of culture and people hang on to that. Phoenix is a boom town from the 60s. It just exploded. I mean, not from the 60s, but in the 60s started to explode. And I mean, geez, since I was a kid, it's just gotten massive. And it's just a lot of strip malls and meth heads and pissed off white people. And but also like I said, like in between that, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. I mean, it's really pretty. We're right in the Sonoran Desert, so it's like there's saguaro cactuses, which is crazy. I'm used to that, but it's like
so that surrounding though, and I've seen it on your posts. Living there, I've seen you up in what seems to be canyons or mountaintops. Does that help with your creativity?
Yeah, it has to. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's a conscious thing that I could pin to it, but I mean, I think both of those things, me getting to get the hell out of the city and get out to go ahead.
Is it consciousness or is it mindfulness, which is what we hear about now, where that fifth dimensional mindfulness, like letting everything loose and just being in touch with, I guess, positivity and positive vibes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think for me, both things are like my creativity and then my ability to escape the city and just get out and see pretty stuff, like pretty desert stuff, or get up into the mountains here. Cause Arizona is a really dynamic place geographically. I just have to drive a couple hours up north and you're way up in the mountains. So I think getting to get out of this and just see stuff that makes me happy and then being creative, which makes me happy. I think it's like a chicken and the egg sort of thing. It's like one begets the next, but nothing's first. It's all like, a cyclical thing that, it's just totally, it does. It has to have a big influence on my creativity, but then at the same time, my creativity also inspires me to get the hell out of the city and go check out the nature.
Yeah.
So I think they're all the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Like your creativity wall, I'll call it, is, it's 360 degrees, man. Like from what I've seen with some of your own, like not the puppet stuff
Right.
or your previous band, but just your own postings. it's what I talked about unlocking the cabinet, not being stuck on one genre, or I'm gonna be this cover band for Nirvana and it's grunge and it's the same thing over.
Right.
I saw some like techno pop from you, like it
Yeah,
seemed. I
yeah.
saw like classical music,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So to me, I'm like, that's the mind, right? Like that's the mind unlocking and saying, I have more to give and offer, and I have more influences than just being a cardboard cutout, so to speak, right?
Oh,
Commercialization
yeah.
when it comes to music, commercialization, don't get me wrong, it's like sports. It's what allows you to I want athletes to make millions. I mean, don't get me wrong. When you're driving around in a van eating the beans, and you hear the punk stories back in the day, and they want to make it big. It was fantastic until you got to that big, and then all the pressures came with it. But commercialization has killed things in many ways, in my opinion, as far as creativity.
Right.
It's almost like it just it's like I said, a cardboard cutout. Everything that comes out of the radio, it's like, yeah, it sounds like this band, and this band, and this band, right? Whereas the odd band I found on the radio, there's that distinctive sound, distinctive or ever changing, right? And how I say that with you, I can also say with the puppets, right? I mean,
Oh,
your
yeah.
personal stuff seems to be a bunch of stuff, but when you look at the puppets, I mean, they classify it as desert punk, cow punk, country. Like there's a bunch of different genres. So with your side of it, when did that create? I know we talked about Arizona and the scenery, but I mean, for your creativity, that had to start at a young age, and there had to be influences. So when did you really start getting into that with the music side, and who was your influences?
Okay, well, that's like a multi-tiered, but I can do it quick, and I'll start from the very beginning. So
Yeah.
obviously, growing up in a household with okay, when I was born, the band, everybody lived together. Like the whole band all lived together. We all lived in the same house. Like my dad, my uncle, the drummer Derek, my mom, and my dad, my uncle's girlfriend. We all lived in the same house. So I have a twin sister. When we were born, that's a house they practiced in and stuff like that. And then after a couple years, everyone got their own pad. But even then, my uncle bought a house. My dad and uncle bought houses right next door to each other in Tempe, Arizona. And my uncle's house had an old independent garage in the back that they soundproofed, and they made that into their rehearsal studio, which is right next door to where I grew up. So I used to go hang out in there as a kid all the time. So music was always there. But for me personally, outside of the meat puppets, which was actually something that I got more into when I hit adolescence. I mean, I always appreciated it, but I was a kid, so it's a little different. The first songs I remember loving as a little kid, I really, really loved the Talking Heads song Wildlife, and I loved You Can Call Me Al by Paul Simon, and I loved Touch of Grey by the Grateful Dead. And these were like these, and I love Michael Jackson too, but those three songs are the first three things I remember that really just, I loved music. So when I was a little kid, after that, I was just into whatever was popular when you're a little kid. I was born in 1983, so, late 80s, early 90s crap, you know what I mean? Like, I just liked whatever. And then I'm trying to think, like, when I really started to get into music, like, I loved Michael Jackson as a little kid. I loved Michael Jackson. And then,
Who
I
didn't?
know.
I mean, Michael had control of the whole world.
I know, yeah, right.
Right?
He was amazing when I was a kid. It just blew my shit. So then I got into like rap music, of course, like when I'm like, actually, because it was on the radio. But I remember being like about 9, and my dad was like, "Hey, I want to show you something that I think you'll like." And he played me The Chronic by Dr. Dre, and I just couldn't believe it. Like they're talking about like he's just saying like cuss words every other minute, and he's talking about smoking weed and his dick and guns, and I'm just like, what the hell? I'm like, this is amazing. Like as a 9-year-old kid that like is watching Beavis and Butthead, I'm like, this is unreal. And then from then, I started playing music for real. Like when I was in elementary school, I played viola for a hot minute. I tried to play saxophone, but I didn't really care about that. And they had bought me a couple guitars as little kids, or given me little guitars, and I'd tinkle around on them. And, buy a fake drum set from Toys R Us type thing, those paper ones that fall apart, that kind of crap. But when I was 12, I got a guitar. I got interested and I asked, and I got one for my birthday. My pops took me out and bought me one. And man, from there, it was just on. And a lot of the stuff I loved as a little kid, when I started playing guitar, I was, into like, whatever was this is the mid 90s, I guess. So it's like, I like to play whatever was on the radio. So I learned to play like Nirvana and Rage Against the Machine. And then I started learning like, Slayer riffs. But then I was like, I want to learn other stuff. So at the same age, I started getting more into like old punk rock, but I was getting into reggae too. And when it came to guitar, I started to realize pretty quickly within the first like year, I was like, wow, some of the stuff I liked as a kid, like Motown stuff that my mom grew me up on. We listened to a lot of soul and R&B. I was like, these guitar parts are crazy because it's nothing like these power chords I'm hearing or this like crazy like shredding. It's like these weird complementary parts that are totally different. And that immediately held huge appeal with me. So musically, I immediately just like my mind just exploded because then I was like, wait a minute. When I started like learning to play guitar, right around the same time, my mom bought me a Tascam 4-track recorder uh, for like after a couple years later, like when I was 14, maybe for my 15th birthday or something. And I was just listening to all this different music and I started wanting to try to recreate it. I didn't even care what it was. It's like, what, it was Britney Spears on the radio or something? Like, I want to learn the chords to that song because I want to know how they did it, like all music, any music. And because of that, and having the parents I did who were cool and into cool music, they started turning me on to a lot of stuff. My mom and my dad a lot. I'd go out to visit him in Texas and he'd be like, check this out. And he'd play me like, old punk rock records, or he'd turn me on to like Yes and stuff like that. Or even when he'd go to bed, I'd just go snatch his CDs and I'd go take them upstairs and put them in my Discman and listen to like whatever, like ZZ Top and just stuff like the stuff I'd heard as a kid, but I was hearing it with different ears. So when it came to making different music right off the bat, I just wanted to make everything because once I started to learn to play it, I just realized, man, I want to know everything about all of it. So getting into different stuff and making different stuff, it just has seemed like part of the musical process from the get-go. The two things are, contingent with one another. One did, you know what I mean? It wasn't like I started playing guitar and then after a while I was like, I want to stretch out. I immediately wanted to stretch out. So within a year, I started to play guitar. I started to teach myself how to play bass. And then within a couple years of playing guitar, I taught myself how to play drums. And then after that, I started tinkling around on keyboards. And then in my early 20s, I had a roommate that had like a Wurlitzer electric piano. So then I just really trying to teach myself how to play keys. And I just never stopped. I just always wanted all of it. So
yeah, that's the evolution. Like you just said, you didn't know where it came from because you were saying about stuff that I heard, but then now I'm playing and all of a sudden, there's an influence, right? And it's funny because I heard an interview. It might have been your dad or your dad and your uncle when somebody said about, oh, Nirvana pulled you guys on and they talked about influences. And do you hear puppets in Nirvana? And I think your dad was like, not really, but it's the same thing as what you're saying. When you're listening to something, you're hearing something that you're digesting as a musician, and it's inspiring you to create your own thing based off it, but not necessarily sounding like it, which I think is where that evolution of music, right? Where how that's creativity comes from, right? Beavis and Butthead, MTV. So let's talk about evolution, MTV. What the hell happened there?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you because you're 41, so you're 5 years older than I am. It sucked for such a long time, right? Like it was cool. It was really cool, man. I remember
music videos were cool.
They were cool, and and MTV. I remember even into the mid '90s, they still had all that crazy art and animation stuff they do, and like it was just, I guess it's just like anything else, man. Right?
Commercialization, man. We got to have TV, but I remember as a kid tripping out to like Les Claypool with Primus with like why known as Big Brown Beaver, the videos like that, right?
Dude, that's for that song. I loved that so much when that came out. That like blew my mind because I was in 6th grade when that came out. And so I was just getting to the age where I was probably ready for Primus because before then I wasn't quite there. I was a kid, a little too young still. And that song just freaked me out. I was just like, what is going on? I always loved the guitar playing and the drumming. I know everyone loves the bass playing, and so do I, but it was funny because for me, that was always really tertiary to drums and guitar playing that I really appreciated about Primus. But the whole band is awesome. I always really enjoyed them. So
Well, you either get them or you don't. Like, so for me, Primus, I'll give you a Canadian version of Primus for me. And I know it's not, when I say this, you're going to go, what? But that whole, when people don't get them, Rush is like the Canadian Primus for
right.
me. Like with Geddy, Neil, like the drumming, because you either like them or you don't. Like the Hall of Fame thing they were talking about, like, you know, it's either a cult thing, like the music is weird, like you don't. And it, like I said, Primus, it was the same thing. You either had a taste for it or you didn't. You either had a creative side or you didn't.
Right.
And that is how I feel about Neil, Geddy Lee. Like, they had some pretty filthy riffs, man.
Oh
and
yeah.
some pretty filthy drum playing, right?
No, they're one of those bands where, like, for me, I don't know. It's just, I think you got to like level music off. So like, you can't discredit who those people are musically. They're insane. Alex Lifeson is an incredible guitar player. The whole band is sick. Like, they're just sick. Like, it's not. I've never owned a Rush record, and they're not like my favorite band. You wouldn't catch me listening to them. I wouldn't change the radio station if they came on. I have no problem with them.
But you appreciate
they're
them.
sick. They're sick.
Yeah.
They're like, they're sick. You know, there's a lot of sick players, but when you can find three people and stick them all together and have them work that well, it's just anything else that's cool. It's interesting seeing how people respond to one another in any context like that, which would be like in a group format, right? Like a team sport or a musical group, anything like that. Chemistry is chemistry, and it's really neat watching it work out, the process of watching humans respond to one another. I really like that.
Yeah, longevity and three people, right? I mean, I watched the video the other day, and I remember seeing it in the not 90s, but I guess late 90s and 2000s when we had internet. But I did have it on the one Nirvana video VHS tape. But they did that British TV show. There was three of them together, and they were so close on the tight round stage, and they played Territorial Pissings, right? And there wasn't a song they were supposed to play, but anyways, they ended up trashing the set after. And I remember the guy saying, well, there's Nirvana playing a song that we didn't actually expect. Hope we didn't wake the neighbors up. But they were so tight, so powerful that, like, if you're not into music and don't understand chemistry, you just wouldn't get it. I mean, it's not just hearing the song. I know that song. It's hearing emotion from the song. And I mean, that's your goal as an artist, is having people feel your emotion, right?
Yeah. I gotta say, like, I've always felt like I like people. I'm a humanist, I'd like to think, but at the same time, I've always felt semi-detached from my fellow man. And the rare occurrences where I feel connected to other people without it making me feel awkward about my feelings is like playing music, man. Like, you get up on stage and, like, you know what you're doing is tight. You know when you guys, like, you know when you and the other dudes are gelled in, because we do like a lot of improvisational stuff in my dad's band and the Meat Puppets, and you know, a lot of stuff off the cuff. And you know, when we're feeling it, like, because we all have such great chemistry, especially the lineup the way it is right now, like, it's just awesome. Like, everyone feels it, and we're like all in on it, and it's so weird because that translates to everybody else. So here you are having this moment, and you're all lost in this moment, but at the same time, you got to be like cognizant of the fact that you're like performing for people or whatever, and it's just this confluence of feelings. And then when you're done, you get to actually get a real-time response from the people that you're giving it to, and then like screaming at you, which could be, you know, intimidating, but it's in this positive way. And it's just like, it's a trip, dude, because like, I don't take much, like, you know, not a lot of it's not a lot of what the pleasure I derive from the music thing is contingent on like feeding my ego. But in a really positive way, that kind of does, because it's like, and it doesn't feel like, oh, you guys like what I did. Because to me, it feels like, oh, we all did this together. Like, you're staring at me on a stage, but I'm on a stage staring right back at you, and I got a better view. So like, we're doing this together, like, you know, and if the crowd's not feeling it, I still gonna have a good time. But when the crowd is feeling it and we're all there together, man, that shit just blows my mind. It's like, you can't help but feed off of it, and especially with live performance art, you know what I mean? Like, how could you not? And no one's competing against you. So the more positive feedback you get, there's no opposition to that. It's only just gonna grow exponentially. Like with sports, you see people like, oh, the crowd is cheering their home team and jeering the away team, and yeah, people are gonna feed off that. But when there's no opposition, when it's just positivity, man, that's crazy, right? Like this is where's the ceiling for how fun that could be? Oh, real quick before I forget, you're in Canada. Is marijuana legal there?
Yeah,
It's not going to hurt.
Let's say decriminalize, I guess, more or less is the word is. You can have it. It's only certain amounts. I mean, you can't carry a 5-pound bag of dried oat bud down the street.
Right.
Yeah, it is decriminalized, so it's fine there.
That's good. It's medicinally legal here in Arizona, which is interesting though, because the states right next to us, all on the long West Coast, you've got California, Oregon, and Washington. It's all legal entirely there. Just north of us, Nevada, totally legal. Colorado next to them, entirely legal. And then here we are, the conservative holdout. Now, we are a major border town, and we do have a lot of drug trafficking issues through the southern part of Arizona. Yeah, that's one thing or the other, but that's kind of silly to me because nobody's getting their weed from Mexico anymore, man.
Keep your eyes peeled for episode 2 of 3 coming up with Elmo Kirkwood on In the Game.